This is the first week that Daraja is back in action, back checking in with her clients
Yep.
from maternity leave. If you're watching on YouTube, you get to see sweet little Azalea.
Yeah, because last
And
time I was on the podcast, she was in my belly still.
Yeah, you had your microphone on your belly.
literally like resting on the belly. How's everyone feeling?
I mean, well, I've been better. My first week back, and we've talked about this, did not go as kick-ass as I was expecting or hoping it to go. Because I was like, all right, I'm back to work. We're going to freaking kill it. We're thriving. And then she caught her first cold. And that was if you are listening and you've had babies, you know how emotionally and mentally exhausting it is to see your infant child experience their first bit of discomfort, and like it was just like not fun for me. I cried like 1,000 times because I was like, my baby. But she's fine. Now I caught the cold, so I'm also not 100%. So I was like, the week that I was supposed to come back and freaking conquer the world did not go as planned, but that's okay because we have tomorrow.
And that's just like, that's how life goes. And I think
For
that's like why I'm excited for us to talk about goals too, is because we're like setting realistic goals is also a big part of that, is about what you're experiencing now is like, we might have the goal of conquering the world in a week, but that's not necessarily realistic like it used to be when like, you didn't have a baby to take care of and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then it's also like being like adjusting or giving yourself grace or being flexible when you have those moments of like, well, I wanted X, but like now I'm sick. Like
Yeah.
I have a lot of clients who are like, my family is sick. I had a client who had to take her husband to the emergency room because he was just like passing out and like really sick.
Oh my gosh.
Or they're sick, right? I have a client who's in prep who is sick and they're like freaking out.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, okay, well, just because you're sick, those goals, like for you, DJ, like you still had to check in with your clients. You still had all your clients to like deal with. It doesn't mean like those goals go away. It just needs to maybe like you need to refine your expectations for that small time frame or make small adjustments or just be like, hey, this is what I can do for right now. And that's okay.
It
Yeah.
has to be good enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I'm actually having phone calls with, well, a big majority of my clients this week and next week, like just 15, 20-minute phone calls to talk about goals for 2025. So
Same.
this week has been like really busy because I still have check-ins, but then I'm having a bunch of phone calls on top of that. But it's been really great because it can really align like client expectations, timelines, things that they have considered, haven't considered, but also helps us as coaches coach them better and help them align their actions with their goals.
Exactly. Like, because I mean, Rachel knows, like, we have some things to discuss in terms of like goals. She had sent a lovely email, kind of like, encouraging me to set some goals for this year, which I definitely had already wanted to do in terms of coaching. And then, like, I have some financial goals and stuff for this year, but it's like, the way I explain it to my clients too, because it's like, some of my clients are even saying, oh, well, I need some help setting goals because it's not something I was like gonna really sit down and do. But, it helps kind of remind you too, like, especially when as the year is going by, to kind of check back in and reflect on those goals that you set and say, hey, am I closer to these goals? Have I achieved some of these goals? Do I still align with these goals? Or, am I still far off? And if I am, what can I do to adjust and get closer to achieving them for this year?
Yeah. So a lot of people set goals, especially right around this time for
Mm-hmm.
New Year's. Like people set goals around a couple different types of things. Usually it's some
Mm-hmm.
sort of like anniversary, like it's the year, new year, new me resolutions. Like
Yeah,
everyone else is doing it, so I might as well do it too.
right. It's a
And
trend.
yeah, it's a trend that's also when like a lot of like things are like marketed towards setting a goal. Like gym memberships are cheaper, coaches and teams are doing challenges, and like there's so many different like ways that make it more conducive to set some goals for yourself. There's lots of like planners that are coming out and restarting, and those are fun too. And so like you kind of feel like, well, if I don't set a goal, something's wrong with me. And then
Mhm.
there's also the people that will set goals around like specific events, like bodybuilding. We set goals around shows. I want to do this show by this time. I want to do, get in this shape by the time I'm this age or by my
Yeah.
birthday or something like that.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with setting those types of goals, but it kind of takes you out of the running sometimes of making that goal to be able to be actually realistic. Because
Mhm.
if you're just setting the goal around a timeline and you're not thinking about all the other things that need to back that goal up and make it successful and make it actually realistic,
Yeah.
then it's not going to happen. And you're going to be disappointed. And then you're probably going to set the same unrealistic goal the next
Every
year.
single year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
I was going to say, I actually talked to a client about this and I was like, our goal of 2025 should be to not diet.
Yeah,
And
a good goal.
right?
It was a good
We had
goal.
to talk about what that looked like. And I said, well, how long do you feel like you've been dieting for? Because her and I actually just did a dieting phase and we're actually in a reverse. And she's a lifestyle client. Like, this is not a bodybuilder.
Well, that's even harder.
Right. And I said, well, like, what, you've dieted before, and like, have you looked any different? And she was like, well, no. And I'm like, well, how long do you feel like you have been dieting before you hired me? And we didn't even start dieting when she hired me. And she's like, oh, I don't know. And like, she had to like look back on some of her actions and look forward into 2025 and be like, oh, well, I'm traveling here and I want to go on this vacation and like all of these things. And then she's also looking at like, well, I want to be stronger. I said, okay, well, does dieting make you stronger? She was like, well, no. And I said, okay, so we need to look at what your goals are and then look at those actions accordingly, and make sure that they align. And like that whole marketing thing of new year, new me, new goals, a lot of it is, and she even talked to me about this, a lot of it is weight loss.
Yeah.
Like, nothing is wrong with weight loss. Nothing is wrong with losing body fat or like prepping or anything like that. But it's like, well, at some point that can't be the goal anymore because you'll die. So like, you'll actually die.
You just won't be successful, or you'll, endanger your health.
Mhm.
That's like die. But
Like
that's
die.
like well, but yeah, there's so much that can go wrong in terms of like on your pursuit towards a fat loss goal, because you didn't do the right things to set yourself up to be successful at that goal, like having a well functioning metabolism, like making sure your health is in check, because a healthy body is a responsive body. If you're not healthy internally, or if you have a lot of injuries that you're dealing with, like, you're not going to be able to respond because your body's so busy trying to figure out how to heal from that injury, or try to figure out what the hell is going on with its hormones or whatever. And it's not that, a lot of people like to blame their hormones or blame this or that functional health issue, but sometimes that is the issue that you need to figure out before you before you deserve and have the right to start a fat loss phase.
I think for me, like, I can even now relate to that more closely than ever being postpartum. Like, one, I'm recovering from a very physically traumatic experience. Like, I've lost I don't know how much blood, right? My body is going through a lot of healing. My uterus has to heal. And like, I think I feel like a lot of women, if not the majority of women, are immediately like jumping to the mindset, once they get home, they have the baby, their body looks completely different than it ever has. A lot of women say they don't even recognize themselves anymore, probably partially due to sleep deprivation. I think,
Delirious.
yeah, it's like, who is that? But you immediately are like, okay, how do I get back to my old body? And I think part of that is like, the idea of dieting when, especially if you're breastfeeding, you have to be eating enough calories to at least sustain making milk for your baby to eat. But you also need to eat to recover, right? You need those calories to like get back to normal, to produce or to help your hormones get back to normal, right? You can't be in a calorie deficit and expect your hormones to get back to where they need to be so that you can actually thrive and be healthy. And so I think when you talk about setting realistic goals for even just that realm of getting your body back or getting back into shape after having a baby, I think it's I mean, there's so many caveats to that too, because you think about, comparing yourself to other women and how everybody's body responds and bounces back differently postpartum. I think setting a realistic goal, even in that realm, I think has to go in phases. It has to come in steps, not just, okay, how do I get from point A to point B? Here's a time frame. If I don't achieve this in this time frame, then I'm failing. It's like, how about we just focus on like getting 3 meals in a day? If we can even do that, how about we focus on hydrating properly? Because now your whole entire life is centered around what this one needs, getting enough sleep, right? Those things I think to me are more realistic short-term goals to set before you can achieve the long-term goal of getting back into whatever shape that you're trying to get into after
Yeah.
going
And
through
that
that.
goes for any type of goal too, whether you're coming back from pregnancy or not. It's like
Mhm.
you have to walk before you can run. If you can't get in,
Sometimes you have to just crawl.
exactly. Yeah. You have to like be able to just get out of bed.
Literally, yeah.
Like if you can't, I've been talking to a lot of clients about this lately, especially people have had trouble with this because it's like cold or it's just their life is slowed down because the holidays, sickness,
Mhm.
things like that. Like if you can't just drink water to your goal,
Oh my
like
god.
what makes you think you can get on stage this year? Like what
Yeah.
makes you think that you like deserve to have like such a high level goal as getting stage lean if it's that hard to even hit your water goal? Because that's literally the easiest, most freest, like most low barrier to entry
Yeah.
thing that you can do that a coach would ask you to do is just like, yeah, can you drink 130 ounces of water? Like,
Yeah.
can you drink 150? Because if you can't do that, then what makes you think you'll be able to do it in a prep? Same thing
Yeah.
with like hitting your macros or hitting your meal plan and executing that at 100%. I told
Mhm.
another person who was asking me, she asked me like what my thought was on her timeline for competing at any time, and she was very open ended about it. I said, well, we haven't had 7 full days in a row of 100% consistency in a long time.
I had
You've
a
been
very
a
similar
lot
conversation
been a
with
lot
another.
better than you were 3 months ago, and I'm super proud of that and pumped about it. But it's a lot of people think that they'll be more motivated to hit their plan
I
once
was
they
just
start
gonna
a
say
prep.
that.
And anyone who has thought that in the past and actually tried it knows that's not a thing. You're gonna fail if that's what you think. And if you can't follow your plan in an off season, you're not ready to follow a plan in a prep.
Giving a
You
calorie
gotta crush
deficit to someone who already struggles with adherence just is never, personally never seen it work out successfully. And I don't think
it. It
any
doesn't.
of you guys have either. And it's not that it's not like inherently that they're doing something wrong or they're bad or like less than for that. It's just, yeah. I,
You can't
one,
outsmart your body
yeah,
No.
or your
you can't
mind.
outsmart your body and
Uh,
trick it into being more motivated to do X, Y, and Z. Like you have to just have that unlock before you can be successful in anything else.
Especially with bodybuilding. Like bodybuilding is it's simple, like methodically,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think too many people get really upset about the word maintenance or like the idea of maintenance. But truly, in order for you to earn any goal, in order for you to earn, and we were just talking about this before we like recorded, in order for like Rachel and I to earn our right to go and like really grow our like again like muscle out of our reverse diet, we have to hit some health markers. We have to have some like we have to like take our vitamins and drink our water and like get our sleep schedule in a really good place. And it's like the non-sexy stuff that people are like they just don't even think about it, like your water goal, like your sleep goal. You can't like go to the next stage of fat loss, of prep, of gaining muscle, of pushing and challenging your body if you haven't even hit your foundation yet. And people think about like even like muscle growth as not working hard or like maintenance as not working hard. It's like, well, in order for you to even just like maintain your body weight, that's a really big goal for a lot of people, especially through the holidays or through the summer. Like it depends on the person and the personality. But like even to just maintain body weight, Like that's a hard goal, but sometimes people just don't even see it as such. It's like, well, you need to just do these very basic things that aren't sexy. And right now, a lot of things are sold as sexy, like, ooh, shred, challenge, whatever. And like, again, nothing bad about that or wrong, but you got to like hit these numbers. And then it's kind of like, what does that look like? How are you going to do that? So it's a great thing to be like, okay, I'm going to improve on my sleep. Great. Tell me more about that.
How? How are you going to do that?
Right.
What are the actions that
What
line
does
up?
it look like? What does it mean?
I had a
Right?
client that checked in today, literally, and like it just was funny because she asked the exact question that was like the topic of discussion for today, which was, "Hey, I don't know if this is realistic." Dot dot dot. Um, we had done a fat loss phase last year, and then her life just got very stressful. Work was stressful, life was stressful, and I said, "Hey, I think we're doing more harm than good by trying to be in a deficit while you're dealing with all of these things. It's obviously not working in our favor anymore. Let's just focus on maintaining. Let's, try to focus on walking calories up because if we want to be successful in our next fat loss phase, we're going to need to be able to pull from something and we have nothing to pull from anymore." So that was our goal for like the last 6 months of the year. And then, I said, we'll reassess at the new year, especially once I'm back from maternity leave. We can entertain the idea of being in a new diet phase, if that's what you want to do. And then her goals, because we actually were on the phone talking about it this morning, she said, is it realistic? I'd like to build more muscle in my lower body, but I also would like to lose a few pounds. Like I want to diet. And I was like, well, those goals are conflicting. So we need to kind of figure out which is the priority right now. Like which one do we really kind of want to focus on? And because both it's realistic, yes. To ask if it's realistic, can I build muscle in my lower half? Absolutely. Is it realistic to expect to do that while we're not eating enough food? No. So, we kind of discussed, deciding which goal to prioritize first, and then, we'll address the rest later on. But I think it's when I hear the question too, like, is it realistic if I can do dot dot dot? It always like reminds me of when I reached out to Paul for coaching when I first started competing and it's funny to like think about it now because like I don't even know how many coaches would have even like said, "Heck yeah, we can do this," or like phrase it well enough for me to still feel encouraged. Because when I filled out the goal portion of my application for competing, I had all I really knew about competing was the Arnold and the Olympia because I found Angelica Teixeira because she was, the reigning champion for both of those shows.
She's my fave.
Ugh, I love her, especially like seeing her get back on stage after her two babies. I'm like, goals. But my goal was I want to be on the Olympia stage in 4 years. Like that was what I said, and it's like there's no way you can say yeah we can definitely do that or no we can't. But that's a pretty freaking big goal to have. And it wasn't something that I had said, okay, I want to be on the Olympia stage in 4 years or I'm quitting competing. It wasn't like something that I felt like if I didn't achieve that, then I wasn't successful. But I felt like I saw what I wanted. And I think my next thought process was, okay, what are the steps that I need to do to get there? What do I need to embody to achieve that? Not like I deserve it because I want it kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I think to me, that's a mindset that kept me going all those years, like competing and just doing it because I love the process, not because I wanted to achieve a goal because I felt like it was owed to me because I said I wanted to do that.
Well, and one of the things you just said, you said like you kept going because you love the process. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people just that's what they're missing. They don't love the process enough. They don't love training enough. They're just focused on how they look.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they start to gain a little body fat in a growth phase or an off season or whatever it is, even in a maintenance phase, that they're only focused on that and they're not focused enough on all of the other amazing things like having the energy to train, having the energy and the flexibility to spend time with your family and go on vacations and eat more flexibly. Whereas if you're in a dieting phase, like a deficit or a prep, you just don't have as much flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, yes, both phases have parts of the process that you can love and parts of a process that you may not love so much, but you love just the fact that you're able to do all of those things.
Yeah, man.
You love like the off season, the prep, the in between periods, because it's just like part of what makes you you, and it's part of what makes you happy. And not enough people really like think about that before they embark on a goal. They only think about the end portion. They
Well, that's
they
because
don't
that's
think
all
about
people see.
how it's gonna feel to get there.
That's all people see too, though, is like, and I think, I mean, competitors are definitely doing a better job at this now with sharing more of what off season actually looks like.
Yeah, I agree.
But if you're, especially if you're following pros only, like obviously I'm talking specifically to competitors now, but if you're only like, if crap, what was I saying? But
Focusing on the end.
if you're following pros, our off seasons are typically a lot shorter than your average NPC competitor or your average competitor in general, right? Like the pros, especially at the Olympia level, are the genetically elite, regardless of the route you're taking, whether it's like enhanced, natural. So our off seasons typically aren't as long because we pretty much have what we need. Our off seasons are really just spent refining our physique and kind of like fine tuning things, working on the judges' feedback.
Yeah.
And I think now we do a better job at sharing our off season and having more body fat. And I think it's normalized that a lot more for a lot of competitors who look up to us, because now they go, oh, it's totally normal to have more body fat in a season of growing. It's normal to actually spend time growing. And I probably need to do that in order to achieve the goals that I say that I want. Because before, I mean, I know a handful of competitors that posted throwbacks all year round because they just wanted to show that they look lean all the time. And then you see them in person at expos and they're like,
Whoa.
okay, right? So I think that's definitely helped normalize things a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, like, you can't look at Laura Lee because she just won the Olympia and now she's doing the Arnold, right? Like, and she's probably going to do the Olympia.
Mhm.
So, like, she doesn't have an off season, right? And so, like you said, looking at the genetically elite, it's great to look at, you know, those individuals and be like, wow, that's great. Good for them. Amazing. But also looking at yourself. And Rachel, you said something about people wanting to always focus on the end goal. And the end goal in competing, a lot of people think is the stage. But is that the end? Like, Rach, you and I both talked a lot about, either we did a podcast, but I think we both posted about it. Like, is it really the end? Like, if DJ's last time on the Olympia stage was the end, like, what happens after? There's so much stuff that actually happens after.
Yeah.
And really, when it comes down to it, whether you're a competitor stepping on stage or whether you're somebody who wants to lose 50 plus pounds, or maybe you just want to get like fit, I don't know. But you still have a lot of life after you achieve whatever that big goal is. And really, what matters is what happens after. I don't care that we lost 50 pounds. I mean, I do. That's great. That's a huge achievement. But can we keep it off? Right? You look at The Biggest Loser and the contestants on The Biggest Loser, and then 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years after they're on the show, are they still at that? Like,
Well, look at
right? Like, it's not there. It's never the end.
look at Chris Bumstead and Sydney Gillen. Can we just take a moment?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Both incredible champions, have set amazing records in their careers and like just really set the bar higher than I think anybody else will be able to achieve as of right now. Both of them announced their retirement, and both of them are like still pretty much just going through life. It looks a little bit different now, but I mean, Chris, I think, has talked about it like in his posts and on his YouTube and in podcasts and interviews. But like, he is now so excited to focus on being a dad, focus on business endeavors and life beyond the stage. And it's because like, not only did he focus and use seasons of life in his career to set himself up for success beyond competing, right? Like, he has his companies now, he has like brand deals and things that can help sustain his lifestyle and what he wants to do outside of competing. And obviously he's created himself as such a big brand that, like, I mean, so many people know who he is. But like, I think if you focus too on just like such tunnel vision on one specific thing too, I think that's also where you kind of just lose sight of so much else. That like, say you do achieve your goal and you pour your heart and soul into achieving that, but you didn't allow yourself to like kind of focus on making sure that all the other pillars of life were where they needed to be, you don't really have you don't have a home to go back to, right? So then you feel empty and like you have to just constantly keep setting these goals to feel fulfilled when
You
you
can feel fulfilled just as you are at any moment,
exactly.
because fulfillment doesn't come from just a goal. Obviously, we can get a lot of fulfillment from big milestones in our life, like feeling fulfillment from having a baby, from getting married, from getting on stage to getting a pro card, winning the Olympia. But those things are just pieces. And so if you're only focused on the pieces, you're going to miss everything in between. And that's something that like I know Chris has talked about a lot, is that like enjoying the process of becoming almost more than the actual becoming. I think that's something he said before, like on a podcast or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
is just like if you don't enjoy that and learn to be present in that, then you're the end won't be as sweet, and the end will just be, it will feel like the end, and then you'll feel like, oh shit, what do I have now? I don't know if I have anything. I don't know if like was the and then you'll have all these questions like, was this all worth it? Did I do this for nothing? I've been competing now, like my first show is 2015, so it'll be 10 years this year. And
Wow.
so, like, I have seen so many people that I've followed that I went from looking up to and putting on a pedestal because they were just incredible competitors and I thought that they just had it all, to watching them fall because they were up there because they put themselves up there too, and they let everyone around them put themselves up there, whether it was like their local fan base or their social media following and the hype team behind them. You think that like everything is about this big achievement that you're after, but then what if you don't get it? Or what if you get it and it's not as great as you thought it would be? People
Yeah.
think they get a pro card and like heavens just start raining down on you. Well, they don't. You have to, if you want sponsorships, if you want money, if you want followers, if you want all of these things to come from competing, well, you have to create that.
Yeah.
Chris created that by coming on early on in with Raw and like becoming a partner in that, not just an ambassador with a code, right?
And he really embodies like more than bodybuilding, I feel like. And he came out with this YouTube that I was listening to while I was like walking on my treadmill or whatever, about identity. And I think that this can go really positively and also in like really negatively, because we've seen those people who just invest their entire lives into this giant goal of stepping onto the stage or being pro, getting all of these like sponsorships and things like that. And that's their identity.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, like, that will end one day, right? Or somebody will beat you. And then where are you?
If you wrap your whole identity up in winning.
Right. Right. Like that's a lot of pressure. Fuck. And Chris talked about like identity instead of being like, who do I want to be? I want to be someone who, and then he talked about like actionable items, right? Like, who do you want to be? Or like, who is that higher self that you see? What do they do? What do they think? How do they behave? What kind of boundaries do they have? What kind of relationships do they have with
How do they connect to other people? How do they impact people?
yeah, like what kind of like things do they do on their daily basis to kind of like foster relationships with themselves and with others? Right? Like he talked a lot about identity, and I think like I encourage my clients when they're thinking about their goals, who is that person, who like what kind of actions does that person take in order to get that goal? And that doesn't mean you'll ultimately achieve it, or it's going to happen in 3 months. Maybe it's a long-term goal, like stepping on the Olympia stage, but you have to act like a pro before you can become a pro. And like, what are those actions? What does a person who embody those actions look like, feel like? How do they behave?
I love
Yeah, I
that.
say the same thing to mine. I just say, like, think about the version of yourself that has this goal, that has achieved it already, whatever the goal is. Think about what he or she does on a daily basis. Like, what does she like? What's their morning routine like? What do they like? How do they make decisions around food? How do they make decisions when someone is offering them something or is trying to pressure them to do something? What do they do around the holidays? Like, what does that person do every day? How do they show up for themselves? How do they show up for others? How do they set boundaries? Like all of those things that you just said, because like if you're not doing half of those things, then you're never going to get there. So you might as well start doing some of those things that the future version of you that has the goal is already doing, because if you don't do it, like you'll just never get there. You'll never measure up to that version of you.
And to add to that, I think like to kind of put all of that like full circle too, I think it to summarize really makes sorry so funny. I think it's important to also think about like the goals that you're setting and the things that you say you want to achieve. How do those goals impact your relationship with yourself? I think it's really important to remember that too, because if dieting causes you to downward spiral all the time and you continually like have this negative relationship with who you are, your body image, and how you see yourself, you probably shouldn't diet for a really long time. If competing does that for you and is triggering because you feel like it sets unrealistic body image standards and it makes you feel like you're inadequate all the time, then you probably shouldn't compete. And like that's okay. And maybe you shouldn't compete right now. Maybe you just need to work on that relationship with yourself and who you are, how you see yourself before you add other elements like competing or fat loss phases and things like that to that. Otherwise, because dieting and then getting abs and a six pack and getting on stage and throwing a tan on and putting on makeup and hair and all this stuff is not going to fix how you see yourself. If anything, it's just going to expose a lot of weaknesses that you either knew you had and are trying to like run from, or things that you didn't know that you had, demons you didn't know that you had that you need to address. And that is also a huge revelation in itself. Like, don't think that finding things out about yourself that you think, oh crap, this is kind of scary, I do have some of these issues that I need to address, isn't a bad thing. If anything, it's you getting closer to the person that you want to be.
Yeah, definitely. Anything that you learn about yourself, that even if it's scary or ugly, it's such a blessing. And it's something we can be so grateful for, because if we didn't know it, we couldn't improve. We
Right.
couldn't, if we can't recognize a problem, then we don't know it's a problem. And
Yeah.
then we can't improve from there and become a better version of ourselves. And that better version of ourselves is probably the person that's going to actually take us towards that goal,
Mm-hmm.
end goal, but also just like ultimate happiness and joy. So if you don't know what it is you need to work on, and you go through something like bodybuilding, like a prep or whatever, that is like so intense and it requires all of this self-awareness, and through that self-awareness you get more than you thought you were going to get. You find out, you fuck around, you find out, and then you realize like, okay, I can either keep trying to just push this down and avoid it at all costs, ignore it, or I can look at it and say, like, well, I can also work on this. I can also discover more about myself by asking more of these questions. I don't need necessarily a bodybuilding prep to show me that anymore now that I've seen it. So, how can I improve from here and just deepen my relationship with myself so that I can have more access to what I want in life? I think that's like the biggest thing about finding out about who you are and your identity, is like the more you know about yourself and how you think, the more control over you'll have of yourself
Mm-hmm.
and how you think and how you move and show up, how your body responds to things. And the more control we have, that just gives us like access to
Yeah.
all the tools that we have inside of us and all the tools in around us, the people around us, everything. And the more access we have, the closer we are to those goals and the things that we want.
It also keeps you from like freaking out every time something happens. Like
Yeah.
education is just such a great tool because the more you know about something, the less likely you are to spiral if it doesn't quite go your way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the more sorry, she's I think on her limit for being compliant today, but content.
She's
But
loud.
I think for me, like having my background in, a lot of exercise science and PT and like just the body systems and what they do and how they work, I'm way less likely to freak out about something pretty minor that might happen than the average person who's like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening to my body. Why am I feeling like this? It's like, you're probably just sore because you had a good workout. It's nothing to freak out about. But I think people, even something that's simple, people are like, oh my God, I shouldn't be working out this hard because my body hurts. It's like, no, you'll get used to it. Just give it some time, right? Someone who's very new to training, but I've heard that from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, even with little injuries and tweaks, like we as bodybuilders are, or if you have any kind of hypertrophy goal, like making your physique in a certain way, you're gonna run into tweaks and you're gonna have injuries, and that's a part of the process. Whether you like it or not, there's a way to train as safely as possible to avoid those. But when you're pushing your limits and you're pushing to failure in training, and you're continuously finding new limits and new ceilings for yourself, you can't assume that that's going to come without some type of like reminder that like, okay, this is the limit. This is it. Like, when we tweak our low back deadlifting, it doesn't mean that you should never deadlift again. It just means that, maybe you need to warm up better, or maybe you need to correct your form or work on your hip mobility, take an extra rest day per week, all sorts of things that can help you not only heal and rehab this injury or tweak, but avoid them in the future or avoid them getting worse in the future. Now, I've injured myself a few times in like low back type stuff with deadlifting, squatting, whatever. And I don't freak out anymore. If I do that, I'm like, all right, well, I need to do some extra hip mobility. I need to add this thing in. I need to do some, maybe schedule body work, all of those things. Like the tools that I only have those because I've found them along the way by making mistakes and learning from them.
And the fact is, you don't like veer completely off plan when you have these moments.
No.
And I think that that's where, yeah. And like, that's where a lot of people really struggle too, is like, I have a client who we did a fat loss phase, lifestyle client, like week 2 of her reverse, she broke her foot. So, and I had my phone, and this was like 4 months ago. And I had my phone call with her, like, I think it was yesterday. And she was like, that was a blessing in disguise. And like, I know, because I've also injured myself. And all through 2023, I've had 3 surgeries where I was out of the gym for 4 to 6 months, or 4 to 6 weeks, excuse me. Wow. For each of those surgeries. I had to just be like, that doesn't change my long-term goal of wanting to grow and eat. It instead, yeah, and be healthy. It allowed me to like reframe and refocus and be like, well, why am I afraid of this? Why am I mentally freaking out? And it allowed me to actually get better at resting and take care of those other parts of me that would have usually freaked out in those circumstances. And like, don't get me wrong, I had some moments where I was like frustrated, but then it allowed me to be like, why am I frustrated? Why am I leaning on XYZ, like exercise, instead of just being like, hey, can I just hit my plan? And my client yesterday said, me breaking my foot was a blessing in disguise, because now I know that I trust myself enough to just continue to hit my plan, and nothing needs to change just because this one variable kind of slapped me in the face. And she trusts herself. And like, that's a massive aspect of people's goals, and why they fall by the wayside is because everything is great when everything is controlled, or like you see that you can control everything, or you think that you can. But the fact is you can't. And so, those goals should be mental resiliency, like built in, and working through those issues and relearning, or like moving past how that like old habits or old self would have responded, and moving forward with the aspect of, okay, I'm letting that aspect of my identity go, because I used to be like, oh, I'm like a really stressed person and I have lots of anxiety. And Rachel, it was actually you that you were like, I don't see that from you anymore.
Yeah. It's changed a lot.
And I was like, wow, that's not me anymore.
But you were still identifying as that.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah.
And now I'm like, that's not me. Like
No, we don't
but
even
that
know her anymore.
no, but like that doesn't mean that I don't work hard and I don't hit my plan. Like it so it's just interesting, like when we're looking at goals and we're looking at goal setting and targets and things like that, it's all great and dandy if we have everything controlled, but we know that life continues to life. Like how Azalea is like, yo, mom, right now, I'm not having any of this podcast shit. Like if you're watching on YouTube, it's like she's just like, yo, I'm good. And we're like, okay, cool. We're just gonna roll with it.
Yeah, we'll just roll with it. That's okay. And that's the thing, is like you really nailed it with like people. I think people fall off from their plans and their road. They veer off course when they're on their road to their goals because they expected to be able to control everything. Like, okay, I have a coach, I have a meal plan, I have a workout plan, I'm good to go. Everything's going to be great. And I know I can execute this perfectly. But they're acting like that. It's so naive because like, unless you live by yourself in a house that's completely protected and there's nothing that can get in and nothing that can get out, and you live in this like just Pleasantville type of society where like nobody bothers you ever and everything's great, like that's just not realistic. There's going to be things that test you, there's going to be things that pull you off. People get sick, dogs die, kids be doing kid things, like there's
Babies be babying.
babies be babying, and things just get stressful, like work gets stressful. We have a fight with a significant other or a parents or something like that, and those are going to happen no matter what. We can never avoid them, and if you keep waiting for a season of life for those things to not be occurring, then you're going to be waiting forever. And there's also the side of things where people, like, they're trying to rush the process, like, okay, I need to get everything done before I'm 40, or I need to get everything in before this busy season at work starts because I can't be doing this during that time. And while there are like better and worse times to like start a prep or start a off season or whatever you're doing, be in a growth phase, there's also a certain amount of just resiliency that you need to just believe in yourself and trust yourself enough to be able to handle, because life isn't always going to be controllable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, we started this podcast talking about how so many people are sick.
Mm-hmm.
And like my number one rule when people are sick, I'm like, if you have a fever, you better not be in the gym. Like you better not be giving that to other people.
Yeah.
And then people start to be really upset because they feel like they missed a workout or they have to make it up. And it's kind of like, okay, all you need to do is just get back into your routine. All you need to do is take care of yourself and then just try your best to continue to move forward. Yeah.
Back to the basics so you can at least know how well the basics are going to work for you. So if I have someone who's been like off or like very flexible, like a lot of people have been over the holidays, right? A lot of my check-in responses this week and last week were like, all right, no changes because you've only been back on your plan for 3 days.
Right.
So like we really don't know what we need to do. There's no reason to change anything because like we need consistency before we can, decide and see if your body needs anything new.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't know yet. And so for anyone that's wondering like, well, what is a realistic goal for myself? I'd say like first look at what the goal is, what the type of person that has achieved that goal does on a day-to-day basis, but also think about what do they not do. That's something not enough people think about, is like, what do I need to let go of? What do I need to take out of my life or prioritize less? Because most of the like, if you don't have the goal yet, if you don't have the accolade or whatever it is you're searching for, it's not just because you haven't built a skill yet or you haven't done enough reps. It's usually because you have trouble letting go of something. So like we talked about control, that's one thing we need to let go of, the perfectionist mindset. But you also probably need to let go of alcohol, right? If you want to get on stage, like not completely, you can drink it, but it's not going to be conducive to your goals. So why do you keep thinking that you need it to take the edge off? Why do you keep thinking you need it in order to be social? You don't. Same thing with food at a restaurant. You don't need that to be social. You can just show up at the restaurant and be social. So, and that there's a season for all of these types of behaviors, but most of the time, like, you have an extreme goal ahead, there's going to be some sacrifices you need to make, and you literally cannot have it all.
Yeah.
You just have to shift your idea and your perspective of like what having it all means. So like, I want to be able to have a social life while I'm in prep and not shut myself off to the world. Well, I can still do that. I just am not involving food with that.
Yeah. And like you posted something, Rach, about like rebranding yourself, and you don't need to rebrand. Like, I think a lot of people get very hyper focused on, yes, we're saying things like your identity and what are those actions that they take and those types of things. And I think that that's like needed. But you also have to understand that if your ultimate goal is like stepping on stage, but you've never tracked macro and you don't drink water and you just eat whatever the fuck you want all the time and you sleep crazy and whatever it is, you binge drink on the weekend. It's like, okay, well, you can't, like, going 0 to 60 probably isn't the best way to go about that. You can instead look at what are you already doing really well, look at what you need to let go of ultimately, but then refine those things slowly.
Yeah. Doesn't mean that you have to put off the goal completely.
Yeah.
I've gotten that from a few people recently. Like, they feel so overwhelmed with everything going on. Like, maybe their health is kind of in a weird spot. They're not sure what to do with it. You know, people struggling post-show, reverse dieting, things like that. And so some of those people will sometimes think like, oh my God, should I even be a bodybuilder? Should I even focus on bodybuilding? I probably just need to focus on my health right now. Like, that's the point of bodybuilding. You have to focus on your health to be a bodybuilder. So why not focus on both? Why not focus on your health and allow that to also be a focus on bodybuilding?
Yep, for sure. And I mean, I think like when you said like letting go of things, like alcohol probably isn't going to help you in your health goal, right? Leaning on food as a coping mechanism probably isn't going to help you in your health goal. So it's kind of like
perfectionism also not going to help you with your health goal because of how toxic stress is in your body.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations about perfectionism with clients, but what is there's a saying that it's like, be strong in your goal, but be flexible with your methods or something, or process.
Yeah.
I don't know
No,
what it
that's
is.
it. I mean, that's close enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
No, but
I like
I think I just, sorry, my camera's off because she was hungry.
Weigh in.
PG
Yeah,
podcast
we keep it
for the visuals, not for the vocals.
exactly. No, but what I was gonna say is, like, I'm definitely guilty of not necessarily the perfectionist mindset, because I think I used to adopt some of that and I kind of let that go as I like realized it did not serve me very well. As most people I think can agree, that's just definitely setting up for failure. But I think I also kind of at times adopt an all or nothing mindset when it comes to like tasks I need to get done or just things that I feel like I've been needing to do. And I kind of definitely in that realm can set myself up for failure, just personally speaking, because I'm like, okay, if I can't get all of this done within this allotted amount of time, then I might as well not do it. And then I just get so overwhelmed that I do nothing. And that's also not productive. So also just learning to kind of compartmentalize and go, okay, what can I realistically get done today that, can set myself up for having less to do tomorrow, and then tomorrow, what can I do today? And then before I know it, my checklist has been completed and I did it in the least stressful way possible. So like even that type of goal setting, like I tell my clients, even setting yourself up for like, okay, what do my next 2 hours look like? Right. And then what about the next 2 hours? And then before you know it, your whole entire day, you've checked things off and then you've been so productive, and then you can relax in peace and not have all this anxiety about, oh, I didn't get this and this and this done. And all that to say too, because I've also done this, don't just start adding new goals and new things, tasks to do once you've checked something off, because I do that all the time and it's just it's not good. So yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people they get so frustrated and anxious about all of the things they have to do that they just, yeah, like you said, they don't do any of it, or they try to do it all and they don't do it
Mhm.
very well. And
Yeah.
so you're trying to do a million things and multitask and try to be busy and just hustle it all, but
Mhm.
you don't end up doing it with quality. So maybe it wasn't even worth doing. So
Especially being new in your fitness journey too, like it can seem very intimidating when there's so much information out there. There's so many different like ways to achieve your goal, some more sustainable than others. And it's just like, okay, well, you don't know where to start, so you either don't start or you start and then you get so overwhelmed that you just quit and you feel like you're just not cut out for it. It's not for you. And I feel like, I mean, everyone's been to school, so you could almost equate that to like, okay, I start this course. Here's my textbook, right? Here's the curriculum. And yeah, that's a lot of information, but you have a certain amount of time to learn it and you take it in chunks, or you don't learn it all at once and then take a test. Like you learn, a few weeks at a time. You take your test, you learn the next few weeks, you take your test, and then by the end of the year, you know what you need to know. And then you graduate. It's like, to me, that's like the easiest way to relate it to a lot of people, because we've all, I think, been to school at some capacity.
yeah, fuck school though.
Fuck
That
school.
sounds just
Fuck
going
math.
over that just made me like,
She's
man,
like
I'm so glad I
PTSD.
don't have to go to school.
I know.
Oh my
I
god.
But
agree.
yeah. What were you gonna say, Jess?
No, I was just saying like, ew, yeah.
No.
I'm not
I'll do
about
a
that.
self-study course, but like
Yeah.
even that, like I have to really force myself to just like do the things. Like I'm doing that right now, and I got through a lot of this specific module of a course that I'm taking on what was it? Like Tuesday, and this goes back to like giving things up, is like it was a night where Austin was going out to dinner with this guy talking about some opportunity. There's always shit like that going on here. And he had invited me to dinner cuz like it was a thing, like we're very much like trying to build things together and whatnot. And originally I had said, yeah, like totally I'll go. And we would just take a rest day or whatever. But I got to that day and I just realized like that's really far away. And I have like all of this education that I haven't done when
Mm.
like I really want to be further ahead in this course. And at the end of the day, I'm not necessary at this dinner. Like I'm not going to add a lot to the conversation at this point in my life. So like maybe it's better if you go, brief me on it later, obviously, and like I'll help however I can afterwards. But I will spend that time working on my education, which is working on my business.
Mhm.
And I'm so glad I did that, because I went from like 31% complete with the course to like 38 in 2 hours. And it was like
Nice.
so
Feels
gratifying. And I
good.
feel so
Yeah.
much better about it.
Because you're like,
And
not only did you like achieve that, but you also like can pat yourself on the back for making the decision to like stay home, do that, and now you also just,
responsible
yeah,
decisions.
you were responsible for lowering the stress in your life
Yeah, exactly. But
single-handedly.
that means giving up something that would have been fun, would have been great, and
Mhm.
a good time, and also beneficial in other ways in our lives, but just didn't make sense for like the best way to spend both of our times.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then you realize like it wasn't that big of a deal.
Exactly.
And like I feel like that's what happens a lot. Like clients who will be like, "Okay, I'm not going to drink." Like that just doesn't serve me all of the time. So, I went out to this social event and I didn't drink. And you know what? I still had a lot of fun and I actually slept well and I felt great and then I was able to go train the next day.
Mm,
Mhm.
Okay, cool. I can do that again, right? It's like the
yeah.
same thing. Now I'm like, shit, I need to go do that course in professional development things.
Yeah. It's like it's cool. Like when you find
That's on
the
my
like that secret of just like what it is like your coach is telling you, like maybe just don't drink alcohol during this time or something like that. And then you see you're able to be aware enough that you recognize the benefit of giving this one thing up, like, you know, I did with that dinner and like whatever we're all doing. It's like that's where you really learn about yourself and you
I've
really
never had a client, by the way, like I've only ever had clients come back and tell me how much better their life is after not
exactly
drinking as much.
same. Yeah.
You know?
I've never had someone, or actually, I have had people like really feel like they're missing out on social
Mm.
things. And you know what? They don't last. Like they don't last in their pursuit to their goals. And I don't mean to be a bitch when I say that, but like if you think that drinking alcohol is making
Into your
your
life.
social life better and is making your relationships better, there's a problem there.
Mm.
And you are not aligned with, if you have that thought and you also want to be a high level bodybuilder or you also want to look a certain way, like have this like really nice fit toned physique as like a lifestyle person, like
Not gonna
you're not
happen.
aligned. You have a wake up call to have one day. And
I always say though, like to each their own, and I will never tell them like, okay, well you need to stop drinking and you need to do X, Y, and Z. I always present it as an option, like, hey, if you want to achieve this and this is what you say you want to do, then these are the actions that are gonna coincide with that. If
yeah,
you decide to
give
do
yourself
something
best case
different,
scenario.
yeah, if you decide to do something different, then we can't be surprised at the outcome. Is always how I present that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
One other thing that like kind of ties into all of that too is like in with goals and setting realistic goals and achieving them is who is around you, like the people that are
yeah,
helping you achieve
my
those
gosh.
goals. So like you being on stage, that's, people say like bodybuilding is a very selfish sport. It's like one person, like you're not on a team as much because like it's not a team sport, but it is very much a team sport in my mind because like not only you might have like your team, like we have team refined strength, we have team Daraja, team Jess, team Rachel, we have, you know, there's other teams out there of just like people that are under the same coach, but there's also just like your initial like smaller circle team, like your spouse, your kids, your friends, your gym friends, your work acquaintances and friends and things like that. And if you don't have a support system that is truly supportive of you and your goals and what makes you happy, then that is going to make going towards those goals really difficult.
Yeah.
And so if you don't already have that, it's not that you're doomed and you can't reach the goal. It's that you probably have some work to do on setting boundaries for will make it more conducive for you to hit those goals. That might mean like setting a boundary with the people at work, like, hey, I'm starting a bodybuilding prep, so I'm not going to eat when we go out to happy hour. I'm just going to enjoy the time with you. Like I'm not going to drink or whatever it is. Whereas like some people have a really hard time with that, which it sucks.
Or even just sharing their goals with people in general. Like, like not only sharing
you're going to be judged.
And like not only just sharing your goals with the people around you to help support, so they can help support you, but also like it sounds so simple, kind of what we said at the very beginning of the podcast, but like wanting to kind of write down some specific goals or discuss them like with your coach or just even having them for yourself, some written down somewhere. Declaring them is even a step in itself. Like if you allow yourself to kind of just say, oh, I want to do this and this year, but you don't really ever kind of make it known in some capacity, then you can for sure bet you're going to be able to get away with, or let yourself get away with not achieving them. And then it's like, okay, well, whose fault is it really? Because you kind of told yourself in the back of your mind, like, oh, I would like to kind of do this year. And then the whole year goes by and you've not come close to completing that. It's like, well, you never really set anything else up to help yourself get there.
And you've never made it, like you've never internalized it.
Yeah.
Right? Like I, at the end of 2024, set a scary goal and I said it out loud to you people who DJ, I can't see you. And I said a scary goal out loud, but now I've internalized it and I'm like, okay, that's going to fucking happen. That doesn't mean that if it doesn't happen, like let's say next year, that I'm a failure. That just means that the timeline is different and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to internalize it.
how, like, who, again, going back to like the person that has achieved the goal in the future, like you have to become that person and look at what is it that makes you that person. And that's what like manifestation really is. It's like, it's not just like hoping I get this thing. It's like you become the person that would get this thing. And that, like, even just using that kind of language, like not saying like, oh, I can't eat that, or I can't do this because I'm in prep, or I can't, like, whatever. It's not about that. It's like, I'm the type of person who reaches my goal. I'm the type of person who works really hard.
Hell yeah.
And who wants to do these things that will take me to my goal. I'm the type of person who makes sacrifices for the things that I want.
And anyone who tells you you're weird for doing that is not your friend.
They're weird.
Like,
they suck.
Yeah. They're weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's end this with talking about just like sharing one goal that you each have, that we each have for 2025, and how we're going to get there.
I should have freaking known that you were going to ask this and like been way better prepared. I'll go last.
Okay, Jess, you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. My a like personal goal for, I'm going to set a few. I'll tell a few. Yeah. One is a personal goal of just like working on more self-reflection work and like just challenging my thought processes more. And how I'm doing that is this chair behind me. I've made the realistic goal of doing 4 to 5 times a week. First thing in the morning, I sit and then I enjoy my coffee and I read and or do reflection work, and I limit it to, well, I give myself like a 5-minute time span, and it might be longer than that. And that's cool if it goes longer than that. But at least if I'm like putting in 5 minutes of reading, putting in 5 minutes of like, sometimes like the other day I was sitting in that chair for like a half an hour of reading and like typing stuff out and just like thinking and whatever. So that's a personal goal of mine. And then a like business coaching goal is to do 2 more like personally led online coaching education courses.
Cool. I like those.
Those, Jess.
Daraj, do you have yours yet?
I do. Okay, sorry. It was hard to think with a baby on your boob. But so one of mine is definitely to like not neglect myself. Like obviously being a mom and like this thing that needs me 24/7. It's easy for me to forget to eat. It's easy for me to get to drink water. I don't sleep as much, and like even just the idea of getting away for like 30 minutes to like either go to the gym or even use my walking pad. I'm like, ugh, how am I going to do that or manage that with like, you know, her needing me, blah, blah, blah. Definitely kind of like setting some like little habits and things for me to kind of make sure I prioritize that, like make sure that I take care of me, is definitely a big one. And then I think career wise or work wise, I definitely have the goal of kind of like building my capacity and my roster back up because I, you know, took some time away, and rightfully so. But, you know, kind of not, I think I've been feeling a bit out of, I guess I could say I've been feeling out of practice or kind of like out of the groove of things. And so I think not forgetting that like I am a good coach and like I am worthy of, you know, having, you know, X amount of clients and, you know, having, I think working back up to what I was and then like beyond that is kind of my goal for this year.
I like it. Yeah. And by the time this podcast launches, Daraja will be accepting clients again. So
yes,
she has a wait list right now that she needs to work through. But
I know. I'll be reaching it. I'm actually going to be, that's like next on the to-do list today.
Yeah.
I am also accepting clients.
Yes. That was my
just
next
putting that out
like,
there.
Jess and Rachel are also accepting clients, right?
Pick your point.
But yeah. My goals, yeah, I have a lot of them too, but I guess 2 that I'll share, more of like a personal goal. Just like your personal goal was my personal goal last year, is like I really wanted to get into that. I also have my chair in my office, like this is the podcast chair, but it's also the chair that I do my like reading and my journaling and things like that. And it really just helped me so much learn more about myself and just operate from a sense of more peace and gratitude. And that was one of the biggest things that I know helped me stay just like completely chill and enjoy my prep as much as I did. And I don't want to let go of that. So I'm continuing that practice.
I'm jumping on that bandwagon, just so you guys know. I also really want
Do
to
it.
start doing that again.
It's good. It's good.
It's so
I
good.
used to do it in prep like all the time, and then I just like stopped.
Yeah. But personal goal would be to honestly like sourdough. That has been one of my goals that I've been working towards since I stopped prep, or really, yeah, since like right around Thanksgiving. Is just like get really good at that. It's like been a fun activity to learn. It obviously is something that I was already eating. Like I ate sourdough every day of prep, so I wasn't about to stop, but I did want to like just feed my body better food. And like that's been an ongoing thing over time, over the last like several years. Just like, how can I get better quality food in without just totally overhauling my diet and like feeling miserable about leaving behind so many foods. So now I'm making my own bread, and that's really fun and cool.
That's dope.
And so just like getting better at that and whatnot. Also, we have like lots of home projects that we have kind of in the works and in the like that we've been, now that I have more energy and time, not doing as much cardio, I have more capacity for that stuff. So like we're getting some cabinets in that we're going to install in the kitchen. I want to put up some just like some other things to make it feel more like home, and also just continue the work towards it becoming an investment property, because that's the goal in the next year or two.
That's awesome.
And then professionally within Refined Strength, definitely like I have specific goals like with the podcast numbers and with like financial numbers for sure, but the biggest goal is just like to surprise myself with how much impact our team can create over the last, like, if I look back on 2025, that I want to feel like surprised that I got that far, because that's definitely what ended up happening in 2024 without me setting that goal. And so now I'm setting that goal of just like saying yes to as many opportunities as I can while still holding strong to our values at Refined Strength. That is something that I know there was parts of me that was scared to say yes to some opportunities last year because of just like kind of PTSD, knowing that like shit can go wrong really easily and shit can get out of hand and overwhelming really easily, and not wanting to fall victim to that. And now I'm just like, I'm not as worried about that. I'm not as worried about like fucking things up, because I've done a pretty good job so far, and like you guys are doing great jobs so far. And so there's no reason for me to assume that things will not go well. There's more reasons for me to assume that things will go exceedingly well. So like we have the Refined Retreat coming in April.
Yay.
We already have like almost 60 people signed up for that.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It's going to be bomb.
it's going to be
It's
really
going to
cool.
be so great.
And you know, there's other like event type things that I want to work towards, and just like, yeah, it's just my team Rachel team, everyone came up with like a word of the year for 2025, just kind of on their own. They just started popping off their words in my group
I love
chat.
that.
And
I love that too.
and my word for 2024 was alignment. That was a big one for me, just like everything aligning how it has needed to over the last several years of my life. And so this year, my word is impact. And so I just want to impact. And part of that is just surprising myself with how much impact we can have.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's going
And
to
I
be
want to buy
really
another
great.
property. That's another goal. That's like,
Yeah.
partly Refined Strength, partly just life.
Yeah.
Austin Richardson Investments. Yeah, because we bought a flip property. We closed on it just before Christmas, that we're in the midst of, like, it just finished demo, and
I was going to
like,
say it's like demoing and stuff. I saw that.
so we're like before this podcast, we were looking at mirrors and like stoves and ranges and like
That's
things like that.
exciting.
So
That's exciting.
yeah, it's really exciting that it's like happening really fast too. So yeah. Well, thank you guys for being on for the SQUADCAST today. Like I said, we are all accepting clients. If you like our vibe and you want to work with any of us, if you want to schedule calls with any of us, you totally can to see if you'd like to work with any of us. Just go and apply on the website. We'll reach back out. But thank you guys for listening and set some good goals this year. You deserve it.
Love you guys.
Bye.
Yay.